The Roman soldiers could no longer hear the commands of their officers. The battlefield had become too loud. The ground shook beneath thousands of desperate footsteps. Dust filled the air until the sun became a pale shadow above them. Men carrying the symbols of the most powerful republic in the world were trapped inside a circle they could not escape. Around them, the enemy was closing in. In front of them stood Hannibal Barca. Behind them stood nothing. On that day, at a place called Cannae, Rome lost one of the largest armies it had ever created. Thousands of years later, military commanders still study what happened there, not because Rome was defeated, but because Rome came closer to destruction than ever before. The man responsible was not a king, not an emperor, not the ruler of the largest empire on earth. He was a general from a fading city across the Mediterranean who decided to defeat Rome by doing what no one believed was possible. He would invade Italy itself, and he would make Rome fight for its survival. Before Hannibal became Rome's greatest nightmare, he was simply the son of a defeated nation. Carthage had once been one of the richest civilizations in the Mediterranean. Its ships controlled trade routes. Its merchants connected distant lands. But wealth alone was not enough, because across the sea was another power rising: Rome. The two civilizations were different. Carthage built influence through commerce. Rome built influence through conquest. And eventually, those two visions of power collided. The First Punic War ended with Carthage humiliated. It lost territory. It lost wealth. It lost its position of dominance. But one thing remained: the desire for revenge. According to ancient historians, Hannibal's father, Hamilcar Barca, made his young son swear an oath of eternal hostility toward Rome. Whether every detail of that story is true remains debated. But one thing is certain: Hannibal grew up believing that Rome was not just an enemy. It was the obstacle that had to be removed. Most generals would have looked at Rome's strength and searched for a way to survive. Hannibal looked at it and searched for a way to break it. Rome expected Hannibal to attack like every other enemy before him, across the sea, through predictable routes, with a conventional army. But Hannibal understood something important. The strongest walls are useless if the enemy appears somewhere you never thought possible. So he chose a path that seemed almost suicidal: the Alps. A mountain range that separated Italy from the rest of Europe. A place where armies disappeared. The conditions were brutal. Snow buried the roads. Animals fell from cliffs. Men froze during the march. Ancient accounts describe soldiers fighting not only enemies, but the mountains themselves. Many believed Hannibal's army would be destroyed before reaching Rome. They were wrong. When Hannibal finally descended into Italy, he had lost thousands of men. But he had achieved something far more valuable: surprise. Rome had prepared for an invasion. It had not prepared for Hannibal. And the first lesson Rome learned was the most terrifying. The enemy it feared was not coming. He was already there. Hannibal's greatest weapon was never just his army. It was his ability to understand people. He knew Roman commanders expected honorable battles, clear formations, predictable movements. So he gave them something else: uncertainty. His first major victories came quickly. At the Battle of the Trebia, Hannibal used deception to lure Roman forces into freezing water before attacking them. The Romans were not defeated because they lacked courage. They were defeated because they were fighting a battle Hannibal had already designed. Then came Lake Trasimene, one of the most brilliant ambushes in military history. Hannibal positioned his forces around a narrow road beside the lake. The morning fog hid thousands of soldiers waiting on the hills. When the Roman army entered the trap, the battlefield itself turned against them. They were attacked from every direction. There was nowhere to retreat, no time to reorganize. The Romans had not simply lost a battle. They had walked into a nightmare created by another person's imagination. But nothing compared to what happened next. Cannae. Rome had enough. After years of humiliation, the Republic assembled an enormous army. Their plan was simple: overwhelm Hannibal with numbers, destroy him completely. The Romans believed quantity would defeat quality. But Hannibal saw something they did not. A larger army is not always stronger. Sometimes it is simply a larger target. At Cannae, Hannibal intentionally allowed his center to retreat. The Romans believed they were winning. They pushed forward. They advanced deeper, exactly where Hannibal wanted them. Then, everything changed. His African infantry attacked from the sides. His cavalry surrounded the Roman army from behind. The soldiers who had marched forward confidently were suddenly trapped. The largest Roman army in history had become a prison. By the end of the day, tens of thousands of Romans were dead. Among them were senators, commanders, and experienced soldiers. It was not just a military defeat, it was a psychological earthquake. For centuries, Rome had believed defeat was temporary. Now they faced something different, the possibility that Rome itself could disappear. After Cannae, the road seemed open. This is the question that has fascinated historians for centuries. Why didn't Hannibal march directly on Rome? The answer is more complicated than many people imagine. Rome was not just a city, it was a system. Its walls were strong. Its population was enormous. Its ability to create new armies seemed almost endless. Hannibal had destroyed Rome's armies. But he had not destroyed Rome's ability to continue fighting. And that became the greatest mistake of his campaign. He expected Rome's allies to abandon it. Some did. But many remained loyal. Meanwhile, Rome changed its strategy. Instead of chasing Hannibal and giving him another chance to create a masterpiece like Cannae, they waited. They avoided the decisive battle he wanted. They turned the war into a slow struggle of exhaustion. Hannibal was a genius at winning battles. But wars are not always won by the person who wins the most battles. Eventually, Rome found the one weapon that could defeat Hannibal. Someone who understood him. A young Roman commander named Scipio Africanus studied Hannibal's victories. He did not try to fight Hannibal the way previous generals had. He learned from him. Then he did something unexpected. Instead of chasing Hannibal in Italy, he attacked Carthage itself. Suddenly, the man who had carried war into Roman territory was forced to return home. The final battle came at Zama. This time, Hannibal faced a Roman army prepared for him. His famous elephants were neutralized. His strategies were anticipated. The student had learned from the master. And in 202 BC, Hannibal lost. Hannibal never conquered Rome. But perhaps that is exactly why his story remains so powerful. Because history is not only shaped by those who succeed. Sometimes it is shaped by those who come terrifyingly close. Hannibal crossed mountains, destroyed armies, forced Rome to question its own survival. He proved that even the greatest powers are not invincible. And perhaps the most unsettling lesson of Hannibal's story is this: Rome was not remembered because it was unbeatable. It was remembered because when someone finally proved it could lose, Rome refused to accept it. And somewhere between the genius of Hannibal and the endurance of Rome, the ancient world was changed forever.